How far away was she when you first saw her?
Just across the creek, about like from here across the creek. It's when I first saw her, she was standing upright.
The footage lasted less than a minute. Yet for nearly 6 decades, it has fueled one of the greatest mysteries in modern history. Some call it the greatest wildlife discovery never confirmed. Others dismiss it as the most convincing hoax ever created. But after years of endless debate, something unexpected entered the investigation: an artificial intelligence with no beliefs, no emotions, and no reason to favor either side. What it uncovered wasn't the answer anyone expected. For generations before cameras ever existed, the forests of North America carried stories that refused to disappear. Long before explorers mapped the wilderness, indigenous communities spoke of towering, human-like beings covered in thick hair, silently roaming deep forests and mountain ranges. The Pacific Northwest's Salish people called the creature Sasquatch, while countless other nations had different names for remarkably similar beings. Despite living hundreds of miles apart, these cultures described nearly identical creatures: massive, upright, incredibly powerful, and elusive enough that encounters were considered rare but very real. These weren't told as ghost stories or supernatural legends. They were treated as living creatures that deserved caution and respect. For centuries, outsiders dismissed those accounts as folklore. Then the forests began leaving something behind. In the late 1950s, road construction crews working near Bluff Creek in Northern California repeatedly discovered enormous footprints pressed deep into the mud. They looked human. But no human foot measured that size. Some prints stretched nearly 17 inches long, sunk so deeply into the ground that workers questioned what kind of weight could have made them. These weren't paranormal investigators looking for monsters. They were ordinary laborers simply trying to finish their jobs. In 1958, bulldozer operator Jerry Crew made plaster casts of the mysterious tracks and brought them to a local newspaper. The headline introduced a name that would soon become famous around the world: Bigfoot. Almost overnight, Bluff Creek became the center of an international mystery. More footprints appeared. Witnesses claimed to glimpse enormous figures slipping silently between the trees. Broken branches, strange sounds, and unexplained sightings continued to build the legend. Among the people paying close attention was a Washington horseman named Roger Patterson. Unlike most people, Patterson wasn't satisfied reading stories. He wanted proof. Obsessed with finding the creature, he spent years studying eyewitness reports and eventually published a book dedicated to Bigfoot. But writing wasn't enough. His true goal was far more ambitious. He wanted to film the impossible. That ambition would later become the strongest argument against him. Critics believed he had every reason to fake the encounter. After all, a man searching for Bigfoot couldn't ask for better publicity than actually finding one. Then came October 20, 1967. A day that would change the mystery forever. On the afternoon of October 20, 1967, Roger Patterson and his longtime friend Bob Gimlin rode horseback through the rugged wilderness surrounding Bluff Creek. The area was isolated, silent, and miles away from civilization. Then, without warning, everything changed. The horses reacted first. Both animals suddenly became terrified. Patterson's horse reared violently, throwing him hard onto the rocky creek bed while Gimlin struggled to keep control of his own mount. As Patterson looked up from the ground, he froze. Across the creek, a massive figure was calmly walking away. It wasn't running. It wasn't hiding. It was moving with complete confidence, as if the two frightened men meant nothing to it. Ignoring every instinct telling him to escape, Patterson scrambled to his feet, grabbed the 16mm camera hanging from his saddle, and sprinted toward the mysterious figure. The first few seconds of footage were frantic. The camera shook wildly as Patterson ran across uneven ground, trying to focus while catching his breath. Then the image stabilized. And what appeared on screen would become one of history's most analyzed pieces of film. The creature stood nearly human in shape but far larger and far broader. Its body was covered in dark hair that shifted naturally with every movement. Long arms swung beside its body while powerful legs carried it forward with an unusually smooth stride. Observers later pointed to what looked like muscles moving beneath the fur, especially around the thighs, shoulders, and back. Then came the moment that transformed the footage into a global obsession. The creature slowly turned its head. For a brief instant, it looked directly toward Patterson's camera. That single glance, captured in what researchers later labeled frame 352, became one of the most famous images in cryptozoology. Without showing fear or aggression, the figure simply turned forward again and disappeared into the surrounding forest. Gimlin, still on horseback with his rifle ready, never fired a shot. The creature never approached them. It simply walked away. For several moments, neither man spoke. The silence that followed felt almost heavier than the encounter itself. Instead of chasing whatever they had seen into the trees, they examined the ground where it had crossed. There they found enormous footprints pressed deeply into the wet sand and mud. Each print showed clear toe impressions and measured roughly 14 inches long, far larger than an average human footprint. Patterson immediately mixed plaster and carefully made casts before the tracks could disappear. As the sun slowly dropped behind the trees, both men realized something extraordinary. Whatever had crossed Bluff Creek that afternoon, they had captured it on film. When the footage was released, it instantly divided the world. Supporters believed the mystery had finally been solved. Skeptics insisted it was nothing more than a clever costume. And over the next several decades, the debate would only become more intense. Then one unexpected confession appeared to settle everything. Or so it seemed. In 2002, a man named Bob Hieronymus stepped forward with a remarkable claim. He said he was the person inside the Bigfoot suit. According to his story, Roger Patterson had paid him to wear a costume and walk across Bluff Creek while the camera rolled. To many skeptics, the mystery was finally over. The claim seemed even stronger when costume maker Philip Morris confirmed that Patterson had once purchased a gorilla suit from him before the famous expedition. For many people, that sounded like the missing piece of the puzzle. But the story quickly began to unravel. Hieronymus' account changed over the years, with important details contradicting earlier interviews. More importantly, the alleged costume was never produced. If such a suit had truly created one of the most famous films in history, it would have been priceless. Yet despite decades of attention, no one has ever presented it. Researchers also faced another problem. When documentary teams attempted to recreate the Patterson-Gimlin footage using authentic 1960s gorilla suits, every attempt looked exactly like what critics claimed the original should have been, a person wearing an obvious costume. The proportions looked wrong. The movement looked human. And none of the recreations matched what appeared in the 1967 film. Meanwhile, Bob Gimlin never changed his story. For more than 50 years, through interviews, criticism, and relentless questioning, he consistently maintained that what he saw that day was a real, living creature. He gained little from repeating the story, yet never publicly withdrew his account. As technology advanced, researchers decided to examine the film in a completely different way. Instead of relying solely on human opinion, they turned to modern artificial intelligence. High-quality restored copies of the original footage were processed frame by frame. The system wasn't told about Bigfoot. It wasn't told about believers, skeptics, confessions, or decades of controversy. Its only task was simple. Analyze exactly what appears on the film. The software searched for signs of a costume, zippers, seams, masks, artificial edges, or anything suggesting a manufactured suit. None were detected. It then examined how the hair behaved during movement. Rather than moving like fabric, the strands appeared to shift naturally with the body, responding in ways more consistent with fur covering a moving animal. Next came the creature's walk. Researchers have long known that humans move in predictable ways. Our hips rotate within specific limits, our center of gravity follows recognizable patterns, and our arms swing balances each step. According to the analysis, the figure in the film didn't fully match those patterns. Its stride appeared unusually long for its leg length. Its arm-to-leg proportions fell outside typical human measurements. Even the location of its center of gravity seemed inconsistent with normal human movement. The system compared those proportions against humans, great apes, bears, and other known animals. It failed to find a convincing match. That result didn't prove Bigfoot exists. Artificial intelligence can only analyze the visual information it's given, and grainy footage has limits. Many scientists argue that ambiguous images can still produce uncertain conclusions. But the analysis challenged one of the simplest explanations, that it was merely a man wearing a suit. Nearly 60 years after those 59 seconds were filmed, the Patterson-Gimlin footage remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Roger Patterson died in 1972, still insisting the film captured a real creature. Bob Gimlin has stood by the same account for decades. And the forests where it all happened remain as vast and mysterious as ever. Whether the figure was an undiscovered species, an extraordinary misunderstanding, or one of the greatest hoaxes ever attempted, one fact remains undeniable. A single minute of film continues to challenge scientists, investigators, and skeptics alike. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what walked across Bluff Creek that afternoon. It's why, after all these years, no explanation has been able to silence the debate. The forest has never answered. And maybe, it never will.